All right, not a wider indictment against Donald Trump, perhaps a more targeted one. That is how Jack Smith is looking at his new approach to make sure that Donald Trump faces his day in court over the January 6th takeover of Capitol Hill, whatever you want to call it. But it is a stretch to see if this gets any further, even with this new focus. Andy McCarthy, the former assistant U.S. attorney, Fox News contributor. Andy, we were chatting about this, but there's a lot that has to happen to make this thing happen, right?
Oh, there sure is, Neil. You know, to begin with, the big issue is still the issue, which is immunity, right? The Supreme Court sent it back to Judge Chutkan in Washington to search through the indictment, decide what's immune and what's not. Once she does that, that's still an appealable issue. And in the meantime, floating around that, you have this other issue related to Jack Smith's status as a prosecutor, whether his appointment was constitutionally adequate as a special counsel, which is also something that's going to have to be worked out and may end up in the Supreme Court's lap. So I think certainly not until after we have a new president, whoever that is, in January, will this case make any progress one way or the other.
Then there is that other issue with this New York finance case and whether that sentencing is even going to happen on September 18th as it's presently scheduled. What do you think?
Yeah, I really don't see how the sentencing can go forward because, again, you have an immunity issue because the New York prosecutors chose, I don't think they should have done this, but they chose to use some of Trump's official acts as evidence in the case, which implicates immunity. And Trump has a right to appeal that. So even Alvin Bragg has told Judge Merchan in New York that he doesn't object to a postponement of the sentencing, which I think is a pretty powerful indication that they know Trump has a right to appeal.
You know, Andy, do you mind leaving this for a second to get your thoughts on another legal matter? And I thought if there's anyone brilliant enough to move this fast, it's you. The Telegram founder, Pavel Durov, is under formal investigation, as you know, for the things that happened that he ignored on his site, of some crimes and the rest. Now, he was released from jail in France, but bail was set at $5.56 million. A formal investigation is underway. Can a CEO be held responsible for things that happen content-wise or people who take advantage of the site for nefarious purposes?
Yeah, see, here's the thing I'm always concerned about, Neil, when these problems arise, particularly in Europe, France being no exception to this in Europe. They don't have the First Amendment in Europe. They don't have a culture that that actually tries to facilitate robust free speech. They think a lot of things are more important than that. And as a result, I think a lot of times we think that American sensibilities about free expression are universal, and even among our allies, they're not. So I'd be particularly concerned about that.
I'm also wondering what the extent is here. And I know we have these other protections, afforded in this country, but it doesn't mean that Mark Zuckerberg is being questioned and criticized by both sides over how he has handled things like his COVID coverage on that site back in the day. And even with Google and the constant scrutiny it's getting the world over. It does seem to be a legal broadside attack on a good many of these guys.
Yeah, here's the big problem. You know, back when terrorism here was such a big issue, particularly right after 9/11, we wanted to encourage companies to cooperate with the government. And, you know, as technology developed and you got these big platforms, we want them to be able to cooperate with the government, but we don't want the government to be able to come in to Facebook, say, and say, gee, this is a nice platform you have here. It'd be a shame if anything happened to it. And that's unfortunately the situation we're in, where you have government really pushing the envelope to get these private actors to suppress communications that the government under the First Amendment wouldn't be able to suppress on its own. So we have to draw this line between wanting cooperation from these platforms against bad actors, but at the same time the real threat that the government abuses its power to get them to do things that the government itself couldn't do.
Well, I lost the bet. I was talking to my staff. I bet he won't be able to address this breaking news development on all these guys. And you did brilliantly again. But I'll get you someday, Andy McCarthy. Great seeing you again.
I know you will.
Yeah,
I know you will.
Great job, Andy McCarthy, on all of that.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.